call the meeting to order. The meeting has been noticed to Evans Printing Media Group, WCOW Radio, Magnum Radio, La Crosse Tribune, Sparta City Hall, and the Sparta Free Library. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes.
Yes, we do. We are going to pull item 5, executive session, off the agenda.
And I'd also like to make a correction to Brooklyn Shire's last name. It is spelled Schreier, please.
I before E except after C.
Thank you.
All right.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Mr. Schulze to adopt the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Reorganization and election of officers. Mr. Russ.
Tonight, we will elect individuals for board president, vice president, treasurer, and clerk, starting with the board president and working through the office. Each elected officer will assume duties immediately upon being elected. After the officers are established, the board president will name a chair of the committee of the whole. The Wisconsin Association of School Boards, WASB, states that there is no need for a second on a nomination, for it will go to a roll call vote, and board members may nominate themselves for a position. Finally, the board president will ask for volunteers and alternate to the WASB delegate for the annual state convention in January, as well as a volunteer and alternate to act as the CISA representative. During this process, the following will apply. Any board member may take a nomination for a position. Before moving forward, the individual selected by vote must accept the position. The person asking for the nomination will ask for nominations 3 times and request a roll call vote to move forward. Are there any questions on the process? At this time, do we have any nominations for a board president?
I nominate Anthony Schulze.
I'll second that.
Not necessarily needed, but that's okay.
Okay.
Do we have any nominations, additional nominations for board president?
I'll nominate Mr. Josh Leiden.
I will decline that nomination.
Do we have another nomination for the president?
I nominate Heidi Presswood.
Nominations are closed since I've asked 3 times. Wendy, roll call vote. We could just say Mr. Schulze or Miss Prestwood.
Mr. Schulze.
Mr. Schulze.
Miss Presswood.
Mr. Schulze.
Ms. Presswood?
Mr. Schulze.
Mr. Schulze.
Thanks. Can I say meeting adjourned? No, I'm just kidding. Do we have any nominations for board vice president?
I nominate Mr. Colin Burns Gilbert.
Do we have any nominations for board vice president? Do we have any nominations for board vice president? Hearing none, nominations are now closed. Roll call. Mr. Burns Gilbert.
Mr. Burns Gilbert.
Mr. Burns Gilbert.
Mr. Burns Gilbert.
Mr. Burns Gilbert,
Mr. Burns Gilbert,
Mr. Burns Gilbert. Sorry about that long last name.
Do we have any nominations for board clerk?
I nominate Ms. Presswood.
Do we have any nominations for board clerk? Do we have any nominations for board clerk? Hearing none, nominations are now closed. Roll call.
Ms. Presswood,
Ms. Presswood,
Yes.
Ms. Presswood,
Ms. Presswood,
Ms. Presswood,
Miss Presswood,
do we have any nominations for board treasurer?
I nominate Mr. Hendricks.
Do we have any nominations for board treasurer? Do we have any nominations for board treasurer? Hearing none, nominations are now closed. Roll call.
Mr. Hendricks,
Mr. Hendricks,
Mr. Hendricks,
Mr. Hendricks,
Mr. Hendricks,
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 All set. I'd now like to announce chairperson for committee of the whole as Mr. John Hendricks. Could I have a volunteer and an alternate to be the WASB delegate for the annual state convention?
Mr. Schulze, this for the board, new board, this is an annual convention in January where all the school districts, their boards of education are invited to go and they vote their advisory committee about some direction that they would like to see the WASB, your association go. So it's the end of January for 3 days, if you can make it all, but it's an excellent professional development opportunity along with networking with other board members.
currently for January 18th to the 20th in 2023.
I would be more than happy to do that.
All right, Mr. Wells is our volunteer. Do we have an alternate?
I would be willing to serve as alternate.
Thank you both very much. Mr. Wells as our delegate, Mr. Hendricks as the alternate. I'd now like to ask for a volunteer and an alternate to be the CISA representative.
since we're all
willing to
jumping
volunteer.
at it, I guess I could.
All right, thank you, Mr. McKenna. Can I have an alternate, please?
I could be an alternate for that.
Thank you, Mr. Burns Gilbert. So Mr. McKenna as the volunteer for CISA, Mr. Burns Gilbert as alternate. Item E, commendation for Brooklyn Schrier.
I'd like to call it Mr. Ford and Officer Nelson to give the commendation along with Brooklyn.
Very much part of this this simulation. So I'm going to turn over to Officer Nelson to explain the details and the logistics of the project.
Good evening. So back in about February, I started planning the mock crash. It had been quite some time since we have done one at SHS. So I consulted with Mr. Russ and got the go ahead. It wasn't that long after where Brooklyn approached me and said, hey, I think we should do that drunk driving thing, and I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, the drunk driving thing. No, Brooklyn, you're going to have to be more specific than that. She's like, the crash thing. I'm like, okay, a mock crash. She's like, yeah. I said, okay, well, I've already started working on the logistics of it. So do you want to help out organizing it? And she said, absolutely. So from that point on, she was right by my side planning the whole thing. She reached out to several of the organizations here, Gunderson Integrated Center for Education, Lanham Shaneoffer Funeral Home. She came up with some questions. We decided, and mainly her idea, to do a video that we would share with the student body involving someone who was personally affected by the death of a drunk driver. So I knew someone who we could do that with. Kelly Lethe is her name. She couldn't be here tonight, but Brooklyn came up with some questions and Kelly came in and Brooklyn interviewed her. She told her story. I think you guys got a copy of that video. Brooklyn came up with some statistics and she put that whole video together, and then we shared that with the student body. So she was an integral part of that, coordinating with the student actors, really with the whole process going along. So I felt it was necessary that we show her some commendation for her efforts in that, because that's a very important thing. It was something that was received very well by the student body, and it's obviously an important topic coming up to prom, graduation. So it's very important that the student body hear that. So I think we should have a round of applause for Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, you want to say a few words? Yes, I'm going to put you on the spot.
So with prom being in April, I wanted to raise, I guess, awareness about the drunk driving, because we live in a small hick town, to say it. And drinking does happen underage. It's not supposed to, but it does. And it's better to educate people on things that happen instead of just throwing them in blind. So we showed them the dangers of what happened. And the biggest part, I think, was the video. A lot of kids came up to me and said that hit home, but I couldn't have done it without Nelson. I've probably been in his office every day for like 2 hours a day about everything, every little part about it. Nice to have him there. That's about it.
So thank you very much. And I can tell you that we had several local school districts reach out. Ms. Wilcox promoted it and made the news and everything. And we had a lot of local school districts call and say, how fast can we put this together? Because our prom is coming up. So I said, well, this is what you need to do. But no, we're very fortunate to have Brooklyn and Officer Nelson and all the partners involved. So let's give everybody one more round of applause.
Thank you so much, Ms. Schrier. Item F, public input session. So just real quick, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 2 minutes duration. Mr. Russ, could you time that as we go here? That'd be great. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not staff or other participants. Participants shall address only topics within legitimate jurisdiction of the board. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Am I supposed to read the back here too? So the portion of the meeting during which the participation of the public is invited shall be limited to 30 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board. First up, Eileen Becker.
Hi, I'm Eileen Becker, and I live on 7948 Jack Pine Avenue. I'm here to, I guess, discuss mom frustration or busing. My husband spoke earlier this year, which only a few of you may have been on the board at the time, but our answer for the route was because they have to be let off on a certain side of the road. But when they come home, they're let off on the opposite side of the road. So our answer really didn't make sense to us. We've had problems with busing since well, 8 years since my daughter was a preschooler. We only live 11 miles from school, but they have an hour and 20-minute bus ride. Part of that is the transfer here at the Meadowview, where sometimes they have to sit and wait for 15 to 20 minutes because they can't come into the school until 7:30. And now this morning, or excuse me, this afternoon, picking up my kids, our deal is if they ride to school, I'll pick them up in the afternoon because they don't mind riding to school in the morning as much as they do in the afternoon. They hate it in the afternoon. So I've been picking them up every day since school has started. And like I said, we've had problems and don't like busing for about 8 years now, because it is an hour and 20 minutes and we could probably go to a different school district. And like I said, open and roll faster and get there faster than riding the bus. And that's the problem too with Cataract. Except my daughter was a preschooler. She was like 4, her birthday's August 26th. So she was a very young preschooler. And she was scared and it took 6 weeks for that change to take place. For them to pick up her with a short bus, and it made 6 like different changes that made it so much better. But today, when picking up my kids, I guess the main thing is their frustration. They don't like it in the morning, right? As well, there's more kids getting on and there's preschoolers getting on. They have 2 new ones and they have 2 new ones eventually joining that bus. And it's full. They have 3 people to a seat and it's a long bus ride. So I don't know. I would like somebody to take and maybe ride that bus and, you know, maybe ask the kids if they like it or what the problems are on those buses. Thank you.
Thank you. Bethany Anen. Sam, is the hand up a warning or is that the 2 minute? Okay, just want to make sure. So if you see the hand go up, that's 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi. I have had the privilege of speaking with each and every one of you at some point or another. And within our communications, something that has bothered me, that has eaten away my brain, is the word choosing or choice. Recently, in an email from a school board member, I was told when my concerns about Cataract bus times being extended if they went into town, and I was told that it was a choice that we make living in the country. It was a choice to be there. So that got me thinking, really bothered me, that do you guys know what our poverty level is in Cataract? It's 50%. So if we're not supposed to discriminate against children for where they live or even their poverty level, what choices do those families have when they're living in generational homes or just aren't financially able to make that move to Sparta if you close CES? Another problem that I had was with our workshop with numbers that couldn't be presented. And that was on test scores. They couldn't present test scores. So I went to the DPI website because they are on there. And that's where I learned that Cataract is only at 25% below average. Do you know what Herman's was? That's 40% below average. So while those numbers can be presented at the workshop, they were readily available at DPI. I also went on to review the Montessori test scores, as Montessori was left off from the slides for some reason. And I noticed on there that Cataract and Montessori do very similarly. So in closing, I'd like to say, I want you guys to do an independent review. I would like an independent review and go back to referendum in August and vote to keep Cataract Elementary open. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anen. Aaron Johnson.
Hi, I'm Erin Johnson, and I was kind of hoping to be last because I'm hoping other people bring the sentiment that I'm going to bring tonight. And so far for me, you've heard my concerns about the budget and those types of things, but tonight you need to hear about the kids. All of the kids in our district deserve to have a year that is normal for them. Normal to be at Herman, normal to be at Cataract, normal to be at Southside. And by closing Cataract, you're changing all of their worlds once again. You have the ability to let them have one more normal year before you make any big decisions, or so that you can find out some of these facts or lack of information that we've requested. And so I encourage you to please do that for our kids because they deserve it. They're worth it. They're worth spending those ESSER funds on to keep our kids in the classrooms that they're in with the kids that they know and the teachers that they have grown to love. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Kyla Mansky.
Hi, my name is Kyla Mansky. I live at 9161 General Avenue. I've listened to the comments made at the last two board meetings, and I'm really disappointed to hear employees of the Sparta Area School District promote cuts in certain employee groups. I'm saddened that my colleagues and friends are upset and feel that their contributions don't matter. I think we can do better. I value all employees and the work that we all do every day to support the students and staff in our district. Instead of pitting employee groups against each other, we should be coming together and supporting each other during these challenging cuts. It takes all of us to make the district work. As we move forward, I would encourage each and every one of us to rely on each other, value the contributions of each other, and work together to make the Sparta Area School District the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mansky. Jim Leverage.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I see now we have new leadership and maybe in two different phases. So I think it's really an opportunity to change the way that we work with the public and how we provide information to the public. As far as lots of the stuff that we see out here just doesn't seem transparent to us. We see you working on things, but you work on pieces of things. You don't look at the big picture, I don't think. In other words, I see it as we take this little piece and we work on it. And we really don't think about the broad perspective. We aren't given that. And that's a big task. It's a big thing that needs adjustment. Like I said, when I was on the school board, I was fortunate to have Mike Pieper. And I'm not sure, there's no reason why your other business manager today couldn't do that, but we knew what all of our costs were per pupil, per school, per type of education, so that when we looked at a tough decision, we could evaluate it holistically. So I don't think that's being done. And I think that's why the public is disappointed. So I don't really have much more to say than that, because I just don't know how, if you can't approach the problem that way, it's never going to look good. You know, when you spend $3 million on a football field or some figure near that, I don't think it's necessarily bad. But when people see you closing a school for $150,000 or $200,000 net cost after salaries, it puts lots of big question marks up. So good luck, and I hope you can take the opportunity to look at things from a different perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Leverage. Randy Jarvis.
Good evening. My name is Randy Jarvis. And I'm here to, well, excuse me, I'm from North 6103 Big Creek Road. And my wife is a teacher in the Sparta Area School District. I'm here to present a peer level comparison of non-instructional expenses and its historical trends. The peer schools are Toma, West Salem, Holman, and Onalaska, schools of similar size and geographical location. Sparta is 11 percentage points higher than its peers in non-instructional or support services expenses to total expenses. If you have the handout, you can see the first table. This equates to 4.5 million of the 2021 total expenses. Looking at the historical trend of non-instructional spending since 2017, it has gone from bad to worse over the last 5 years. You can see this highlighted in the chart just below. It was 13.4 million or 39% in 2017, and it increased year after year to 19.2 million or 47% in 2021, when it actually exceeded instructional spending for the first time. This is a $5.8 million increase in annual non-instructional spending over 5 years. This begs the question, do a significant number of experienced teachers leaving the district have a correlation to this increased spending in support services versus instructional spending? In turn, does that have an impact on test scores? Well, what does all this mean? Closing cataract will only exacerbate the aforementioned allocation. Administration's own numbers show that the only significant savings from closing cataract will come from instructional savings, teacher salaries. What we should be doing is looking for cuts in non-instructional spending, because Sparta Area School District's primary mission is to provide a quality education. That can only be accomplished by prioritizing instruction, and closing cataract is not prioritizing instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Section 2 reports, Colonel Poss.
Good evening, Sparta School Board members. I'm Colonel Mike Poss, Garrison Commander, Fort McCoy. With me tonight is Command Sergeant Major D. Domenico, the CSM of Fort McCoy. And we are here for mutual appreciation and continued partnership of Fort McCoy and the schools of Sparta. And also with me tonight are some other special guests. I have Master Sergeant Guzman, who is a soldier of Fort McCoy, and her daughter Evelette. Miss Becky Wally, our school liaisons officer. Miss Tanya Townsell, public affairs officer. Also, Miss Dawn Poss, Sparta mom of the Posse platoon, and my wife. And my 4 sons, senior at Sparta High School, Brad, who's also an Eagle Scout. 11th grader Derek in robotics and marching band. 9th grader Nate, who's a little shy, but he's a really good wrestler. And he also plays football. And 7th grader Andy, he's also very good in baseball, plays basketball and golf. And they are wearing purple for Military Month of the Military Child. And now I'd like to play a quick video if I could.
And we're truly honored to be a part of this special month of the Military Child.
So let's all purple up to show our support.
The month of April provides an opportunity to recognize and honor the service of our youngest heroes, military children. This year's theme is Military Children and Youth, Standing Strong and Proud.
Families and children are the strength behind the force, supporting soldiers as they focus on their missions in serving the nation. These kids deserve our recognition and appreciation as they support their family members who serve.
Child and youth services, as well as local schools, play an important role on a daily basis in ensuring military children and their families have the support they need to meet their unique challenges. Fort McCoy Child and Youth Services have many activities planned throughout the month of April to celebrate these strong, resilient military kids.
The month of the military child underscores the important role military children play in our armed forces communities. There are more than 2 million military children worldwide. The parents of these children currently serve or have served in the active component or are members of the reserve force, the National Guard, or Army Reserve. Military children serve in their own way, and they change schools up to 9 times between the kindergarten and high school graduation. They are the epitome of resilient. Month of the Military Child allows us an opportunity to recognize the sacrifices of our children while at the same time celebrating their accomplishments.
Fort McCoy is very fortunate to have a great partnership with the Toma and Sparta school districts, which demonstrate tremendous support to our military children and families. While these districts have the largest population of Fort McCoy's military children, other surrounding communities and school districts also have military children and families. They also play an important role in supporting those military families. Here are some amazing children sharing their stories.
So the thing that I like the most about being a military child is being able to learn baseball from many different coaches around the US. I like to learn a lot about like pitching and mechanics.
The experiences that I get to have and being able to visit the new places. It's also really fun to make some new friends too, which makes it really cool.
Sometimes my dad brings back these cool things. And also once I went to go see him jump out of the airplane once. It was really cool.
It's not that bad moving around. Like everyone says that it's so bad moving around. And it's not that bad because you learn so many things from it and you become so open. So like you can do like any job because you're not scared to like speak or try new things.
I've been a military kid my whole life and I was born in Germany. So I've loved moving all over the place.
My favorite part about living in Korea was like the culture and like all the different people and like stuff you would see.
My favorite part about being a military child is traveling a lot. We get to move to other places and meet new friends in those places.
Thank you, Fort McCoy Child and Youth Services and the local school districts of Sparta, Toma, and surrounding communities for joining us in the celebration of military children and recognizing their commitment, sacrifices, and contributions.
Welcome everybody to Fort McCoy. This is April and month of the military child.
Sorry. So I'm CSMD Domenico, and along those same lines, our CYS Child and Youth Services is hiring. So if anybody knows of anyone that would be a good fit, USA Jobs is where those announcements are. Also, the summer programs that we have are great opportunities for those military children. If you know of any that need something to do during the summer, please send them our way because we do have those summer programs. Just help us get the word out. So thank you for that. We also wanted to let you know that our Afghan mission is complete and we are rolling into a busy training season. Along with that, we have new 4-story barracks that are starting to open up next month. So that'll help us with our housing of those soldiers that come to train. And then also to let you know, the ski hill may be closed, but our campsite is open. There's swimming and things you can do there, as well as the fishing and hunting that you can do on Fort McCoy. So thanks for supporting us and we hope we can support you as well.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. One of the first things I did when I arrived to Sparta was check out the town. I brought my family downtown And quite often you'll see my family and I, as well as members of the military in town. We like to partake in the events, shop, spend our money. I know the chamber likes hearing that, and we will continue to do that. I also wanted to host community leader events out at the fort. And so some of you have been out there already on some of those days where I'll bring in community leaders. I'll show you around the fort, life in the day of a soldier. It's a lot of fun. And I have another one coming up in June that's going to be specifically tailored to the school district, the school board, principals, teachers, etc. So be looking for that date and that invitation in mid-June. We also want to invite everyone from the public to our Armed Forces Day open house event on May 21st from 9 until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's open to the public. It's a great chance to come and check out the fort, see the static displays, see our soldiers and everything that we have to offer. We're also proud of the economic impact that the Department of Defense provides to the local area. For example, the STEM grants of $750,000 and the military impact money due to the many military kids that go to these schools, including some of them that you've seen tonight. Also, we just received the numbers for the economic impact of Fort McCoy to the region, and they are up this year. This year, we're nearly at $2 billion of an economic impact to the region, making us one of the largest employers in this area. And we're very proud of that economic impact and what we provide. All good things come to an end. And my tenure as a garrison commander has been busy, eventful, but it's gone by fast. And so I'd stay as long as I could if they let me, but unfortunately these positions are tenured. And so I will change out and have a change of command ceremony on July the 14th out at the fort. And you're all invited, of course. So we're going to continue to train. You're going to start to see again, you probably already have a lot of soldiers around, the big trucks on the road. I followed a few coming in. I know they go a little bit slower because I make them go slow to be safe. So thanks for your patience on that. You'll hear the helicopters flying around like we just were today, right, Sergeant Major? And enjoying doing that Army training, as well as you'll be hearing the big guns, if you haven't already, firing. And I like to say, the more we sweat in training and peacetime, the less we bleed in war. So we appreciate your support on all that. And you'll continue to hear the big booms and no, it's not thunder, it's the sound of freedom. So thank you very much.
All right, and I'd say just one more round of applause for Colonel Poss, his team, and all of our military children. This is pretty cool. Thank you. All right, section B, follow up to Board of Education workshop on April 20th, 2022.
Yes, we just wanted to give a quick update. We're going to have some upcoming slides in regards to the workshop last Wednesday. And before we get into the follow-up items, I did want to thank everyone again for coming out and sharing and having a discussion. And based on those discussions and some questions that we couldn't answer at the time and maybe some follow-up discussions, we decided to put together a report for the board and for everyone else to get those questions answered and to share a little bit more information. So three things before I turn it over to Ms. Hauser. There was a question about Fort McCoy transportation. Working with Miss Wally, found out some things that Toma does not provide, or the fort does not provide transportation to the schools. However, they do have a PM route that will take Toma students back into the fort to the school age center. However, that's all the transportation that is provided. They do not transport to school. For Sparta, the Southwest does pick up students at their schools and then takes them to the school age after school. And the school age center is a pickup and drop off spot in the morning for parents. Parents have to stay there with their children until the bus comes, and they are able to stay there after school too until the bus drops them off. Talked a little bit about the full-time allotments that are denoted to cataract. MAPE, the music, art, PE, LMC, school counselings all have the same allotted time, and those are scheduled within the school day. For part-time allotments, no official time study has been conducted, but we're confident that the FTE allowed to that is giving that time appropriately. And please remember that when work does not necessarily have to be done at cataract to be that FTE. So if a school counselor, for instance, is not at cataract, I'm sorry, a school psychologist is not at cataract, doesn't mean that they're not working on cataract items. And the last question was, does the school district, other school district need their permission, our permission to come into the district to pick up or transport enrolled students? And the answer is yes. Per the DPI site, that non-resident school district is prohibited from picking up or dropping off students within the boundaries of a resident school district without permission from the resident school district. So we did find that clarification as well. Ms. Hauser.
We provided school level spending per student for cataract, Southside, and Herman last week, and we had a request to add Sparta Montessori. So they are in red on the bottom. And then on the next slide, we had the number of staff to students for cataract, Southside, and Herman, and we added Montessori as well there. And then the following slide, Ms. Brueggeman.
Yep. There was some questions about SVLA. So here's the information for this year, including our staffing, the enrollment you had for both semesters, some fees from the WEN network. And technology, there is no additional fees per the one-to-one devices that the students would get in building or with SVLA. And then looking toward next school year, we have a decreasing enrollment. So we are currently analyzing the staffing needs based on that enrollment. We are also looking at working with local districts to determine if we can continue to support our virtual learners through a partnership approach that would decrease our staffing costs. And some of our teachers at the high school are now WEN certified, so we can take in state enrollment from other districts into our high school courses. There was some follow-up on wanting the forward data. This is a breakdown from 3rd and 4th grade. The report cards for cataract and Herman include both 3rd and 4th grade together in their in the data on our state report cards on the DPI website. The Montessori data on the DPI state report card does include 3rd through 6th grade. So some of the numbers might not match up exactly for that Montessori. So I broke it down just for 3rd and 4th grade per each of the school districts or each of the schools and each of the grade levels. And I'd just like to say all of our schools and all of our staff work hard each and every day to meet the needs of all of our students.
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question.
Ms. Prestwood?
So you said that there's a possible projection that that we'll offer SBLA statewide to high school students for our high school curriculum. Do you have any initial inclination of what that number may or may not look like?
I don't have the budgetary number, but we have 109 seats available to take in statewide courses at this time.
Do you feel that we can fill those 109 seats?
Only time will tell. Since it's going to be our first year taking in statewide courses, I really don't know, but that's the number of projected from the WEN network.
A little bit of a follow-up to that. What's the process that we as a district utilize to try to bring in students from around the state for SVLA?
So because we partner with WEN, they would come through the WEN network. They're kind of the bridge. We had to teach the WEN curriculum at that high school for this this year before we could offer the statewide courses. So of course, at the high school level, the goal would be to even out that our courses that we bring to the other states, the ones that we have our students take, and then we have the 109 seats available right now.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes. So these 109 seats, are we charged for them whether or not we fill them all?
We are only charged for the seats the classes that we take through the state, and we would generate income if we sell those seats to other students across the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McKenna?
So in those 109 seats, we're competing with every other virtual school in Wisconsin, correct?
Virtual school, yep. Virtual seats through the state.
Is it fair to assume there are virtual schools that are much more advanced in this than we are at this point?
I would
I
say
get-
yes, some.
Okay, I guess what I mean is that this being our first year going into our second, we're competing same seats with people who've been doing this for 15 plus years.
Yep. And the three classes that the classes that we're able to offer are the core classes across the state. So I'm not sure exactly how the WEN network distributes those courses and those classes. I can get more information for you if you'd like.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
I guess my basic question though is we're putting out ESSER funds, $550,000 on a hope that we're going to fill 109 seats and be able to generate income. I think we're in a position financially that I'm not sure we can hope that happens. Are there other options that we've looked at for SBLA to reduce that $550,000 cost, but still offer it to everybody?
Yes, that's why we're talking to some other local districts right now to see if we can have some partnership, especially at our K-8 level, where most of our staffing cost comes from.
Any clue on timeline to put that piece together?
We've made initial contacts and we're looking within the next 3 weeks of having some more conversations once their enrollment is complete.
Thank you very much.
Can we go back a slide? So is that number projected to increase with more?
It would project it to decrease. If we
de-
fill some of our seats, we would generate some income. And then if we partner with some local districts for our K-8 programming, that would also just decrease some of our staffing costs.
Yeah, I'm lost on the 109 seats. You said that we could sell those if we don't fill those? Or-
No, the WEN network fills those seats from other students across the state that are taking virtual, that need that high school virtual courses.
All right. And I'm just wondering if that budget number is fixed or does that change based on how many students we acquire?
No, it's $200 per student per course.
All right.
All right,
And
next.
Let me
Oh, yeah,
ask one
please.
more clarification. Those 109 seats that are available through WEN, does a student who needs one of those core courses select the provider, or does WEN budget them out to different districts who offer that core course? So
That's what I'll have to get more information for you. Ms.
Okay.
Russ is the one who's been working with the WEN network. So I'm taking this information that I've gathered from her and I can get more clarification
okay,
from
so
her.
it may not necessarily be a competition.
Yeah, I'm not
It may
exactly
be
sure.
more of a distribution.
I think so.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? All right, we'll go ahead and move forward to item 3, consent agenda.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second. Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Leiden. All in favor?
I think that might be a
That's a
roll call vote.
Is that a roll call?
That's roll call.
There's nothing written down here for where.
I only learned that like the last couple months. so-
Perfect, there we go. All right, roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, business. Item A, discussion and possible action to approve professional development responsive classroom training for August 2022. Ms. Brueggeman.
Are there any questions from the presentation 2 weeks ago?
So no questions. I'll make a motion to approve the responsive classroom professional development training for 141,000 out of the Focus Forward Today grant.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Mr. Light and a second from Ms. Prestwood to approve the professional development responsive classroom training for August. Will these all be roll call?
Anything that requires money is essentially roll call.
Perfect. Okay. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, motion carried. Item B, discussion and possible action to approve the 2022-2023 mathematics contract with CESA 6. Ms. Brueggeman.
Yep. Just a quick reminder, this is the math contract where we bring in coaches from CESA 6 to improve our mathematics instruction and also to be paid for through the Focus Forward Today grant.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the 2022-2023 mathematics contract with CESA 6.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Lighten. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. Section C, discussion and possible action to approve student one-to-one devices. Mr. Stearman.
Thank you. So at last committee meeting, we reviewed the different options for student one high school, and we ended up with the Apple 10.2-inch iPads with touch keyboards. And then we will fund this through ESSER and purchase those outright as opposed to leasing. Other information on the slide if you're interested. Did anybody have any questions specifically about that?
If there are no questions, I make a motion to approve the purchase of the iPads and for the funds to come out of the ESSER funds.
When did we make the decision to purchase instead of lease?
It was based on, Leah can answer that more, but it was based on the availability of the ESSER funds versus having it be coming out of every year's operating budget.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like a clarification on that if you could.
So we have the funds available to purchase. So ESSER is the upfront allotment. We don't have to use a portion of it each year. And when we lease, we have interest costs, so additional costs. So therefore, paying for them upright saves on the interest cost.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? I have a motion for Mr. Leiden. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. McKenna seconds. Roll call. Yes.
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 Motion carries. Item D, discussion and possible action to update board policy Article 521, Mr. Russ and Mr. Blaha.
Yes, at the committee meeting, it was recommended that we increase the contribution of the districts, $600 for individuals who earn the right to a national competition. And we did increase the total amount for a club to $5,000. And the rest would be picked up through fundraising as they've done in the past.
Are there any questions for Mr. Russ and Mr. Blaha?
Remind me, this is the 600 per student with the 5,000 total, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Did we come up with a number for average year?
Well, the last time we have the last 5 years total through the Fund 10, and it's about $10,500. However, 2 of those being COVID years, we didn't send a lot of people to nationals. So we're looking at, depending on what we have, if we have it varies. Because if we have HOSA, FCCLA, DECA, FBLA all go, it could get this is used quite a bit then. But we don't have except for the last 5 years of the 10-5, we don't have a total. Mr. Blaha may have a little bit more than that, but it really depends on the year.
How many clubs do we have that could possibly go to nationals?
As Mr. Russ said, DECA, FFA or FBLA, FCCLA, HOSA, and then powerlifting has been those. We've had 5 different clubs use it over the last 5 years.
So maximum $25,000.
Correct. That would be the maximum.
I think the thing to remember here is if we're getting our students to a national level, that's a big deal. And our students and our advisor, that's a part of that, deserve to have a little bit of help when it comes down to that. So any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to update board policy article 521 to $600 per student and $5,000 per club for the 2022-2023 school year.
I'll second that.
All right, I have the motion. Mr. Wells is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Item E, discussion and possible action to approve the sanding of the Meadowview gym floor. Mr. Fromm.
I'm looking for approval for Stocker flooring at $38,975. And if we are to add the stained Spartan head, which the Herman School has, that would be an additional $3,800.
Mr. Fromm, this is only if the funds are available out of this year's budget, correct? Okay.
Any follow-up questions or comments?
Do we have a closer number as to how much money may be in that unallocated fund bucket?
Anticipate that it will be enough to cover this. I don't have an exact dollar for you.
Okay, and then whatever's left with those unallocated funds, where do they go?
So those would likely come to the board for 6 contribution or balance.
Okay.
Are there any further questions or comments?
So this is a part of this year's budget side. Okay.
All right, hearing no further questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve soccer flooring bid and add the stained Spartan head pending availability of unallocated funds.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Leiden. Roll call. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 No. Motion carries 5-2. Thank you, Mr. Fromm. Item F, discussion and possible action to approve the south side canopy. You're up again, sir.
Next slide. This is basically what I talked about 2 weeks ago. I was asked to get some additional quotes for just removal of the canopy. I'm not sure if that's on the next slide. That's from Feller and Hammer to just remove the canopy and replace the sidewalk. That'd be $32,000. To remove the canopy, replace the sidewalk and canopy was $89,400. And then to remove the 8 courses of block that's behind the canopy, when we pull that off, that was an additional 27,500 through Fowler and Hammer, which put it at 116,900. Markin and Johnson was at $53,144 to replace, just remove the canopy and replace the sidewalk. And to remove the canopy, replace the sidewalk and replace with a new canopy was $109,044. And then to remove and replace the 8 courses of block behind the existing canopy brought that price up to $119,091. Next slide.
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Fromm?
So Mr. Fromm, with the removal of the canopy and replacing the sidewalk, is that also diverting the water up top to go where it needs to go?
Yes.
Okay.
There's 2 scuppers up above and those would be filled in.
Okay.
If we remove the canopy and didn't replace, we don't know what the block behind it.
Correct. It might be smeared with tar, and Mark Johnson was concerned that it'd be just easier to remove those 8 courses of brick and replace it with new. And the difference between the 2 bids was Mark Johnson was at $10,047 to do that work to remove and replace the brick, and Fowler and Hammer was $27,500 for that portion of the work.
As of right now, Mr. Fromm, how many of our schools have a canopy? Is
Pretty
it
much
just,
every school has some canopy in some shape or form.
Mr. Fromm, help me to understand the, is there an option there that includes replacing the courses of brick, but not replacing the canopy? Because it looks like the third one replaces the canopy as well as the brick.
The last option was replacing with the new canopy with Fowler, Hammer, and Martin Johnson.
So if we remove the canopy and replace the sidewalk and find out that the brick needs to be replaced also, is that an option there that I'm not seeing?
We don't know what's there.
Okay.
So
we don't. Do we have an idea of what it might cost to replace that brick? My concern is, you know, I obviously I would vote for removing the canopy and replacing the sidewalk. But that leaves us open to this possibility that we're going to have an additional expense then to replace the brick. And we have, because I'm ignorant of this, have no concept to how much that might cost.
the Martin Johnson quote, that was $10,047. And then with Fowler and Hammer, that same cost for the brick was $27,500.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Can we have one contractor remove the canopy and the other one do the brick?
That's not likely to happen. And to be honest, the contractors I talked to, they're more into building than demo. So they're not super excited to do the demo, but of course, if I ask for a number, they'll give me a number.
I'm just trying to remember. I feel like there's been nothing but problems with the canopy at South Side. I mean, what are the chances that we get a new canopy up there and we have the same type of issues?
Right. Do we have anybody local that is willing to do the demo that might be a little?
I approached on Schrier and he's booked up, and I also approached Brickle Brothers and they are booked up. It's not even a possibility for them to perform the work this year.
Okay.
But if we replace the canopy, or even if we remove the canopy in this quote, those 2 scuppers that are in the front, which the water is draining off the building onto the canopy, those would be removed. So we would not have the water and freezing issue on the sidewalk like we currently have, whether we replace the canopy or not.
So we don't have to make a decision right now for the brick, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think that we should remove the canopy and replace the sidewalk from Fowler and Hammer.
Real quick, Mr. Wells, did you have a question or comment? I saw you reach in a number of times.
Yeah. Is our third option the best long-term option, or are we seeing something? Because I know we were mentioning that brick, so if they find something, or it's gonna become a bigger issue.
It would
But-
be more of a aesthetic issue than a performance issue. So if we remove the canopy and then we kind of have an eyesore, I mean,
it would not have any detriment to, or to safety or the use of the building. And we could always remove the brick and replace it at a later time.
Could I clarify where these funds would come from again?
This would be out of the 22-23 or next school year's budget. And it would come out of our capital projects. So whether the board decided to use Fund 46 or Fund 10, but it would be the capital project budget.
Thanks.
And that budget, remind me, is 400,000 is what we decided.
So we typically spend 500,000 approximately a year. We've already allocated 400,000 out of Fund 46. The big project we already have on the books though for next year is the HVAC at the high school. And that'll take up much of that 400,000.
Right.
The benefit to all these options is that remove canopy and replace sidewalk is the part of all of them. So
Mhm.
regardless, once that work is done, if the contractor finds something that may alter this decision, we can always come back as a board and make a change
Correct.
based on that.
I know the HVAC is the next one on the list. What does that number look like? Just so we have an idea, please.
That's $30,940 per annual HVAC contract, service contract. Heidi, did you make-
Crestwood, are you talking about the item tonight or?
Yes. Yep. If you
Oh,
could just remind me what that number was. And you said it's 39,000.
30,940. And is that the same bucket for the budget, or is that a different one?
That would be the buildings and grounds operating budget.
Okay, so it is a different bucket then.
Yes.
Heidi, did you make a motion?
I did not.
Okay.
I threw it out there. That's what we should do.
Okay.
But I will definitely make the motion to remove the canopy and replace the sidewalk from Fowler and Hammer in the amount of 32,000.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Mr. Lyden. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Just to be clear, are we replacing the canopy or no?
Nope, just removing it.
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Item G, discussion and possible action to approve the HVAC service contract.
Next slide. The three options we have, and the first one is complete controls, and that's who we currently have our annual HVAC service contract through. The currently hourly rate for this next contract year would be $110,050 for an hour for control or mechanical work. I got a quote from Johnson Controls, and theirs is $170 per hour for control work, but they are unable to service our systems. We have Train and Siemens, and their hourly rate for mechanical work is $140 per hour. From North American Mechanical Incorporated, they also are unable to service our HVAC software. Their mechanical rate per hour is $122.40 an hour. And if it's a service call, it's an additional $60 for the service call. For preventive maintenance, that $60 service call fee is waived. So the most economical choice I have is $110.50 an hour at 280 hours for the year, which comes out to $30,940 for the service contract for 1 year. And that includes control work, which is software, the program, and the Train and Siemens systems, and also the mechanical work. Mechanical work are both charged at the same rate. Next slide. Any questions?
I have one. How long have we been working with Complete Controls?
For quite a few years. I don't know exactly, but I would say for probably at least 15 years.
Okay.
In this part of the state, the school districts in west central Wisconsin, pretty much everyone has complete control.
Any follow-up questions or comments?
Make a motion to go with complete controls with the HVAC contract for maintenance.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Burns Gilbert, second from Mr. Lyden. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Item H, discussion and possible action to approve the CISA 4 2022-2023 contract. Ms. Coolidge and Ms. Brueggeman.
Just as a reminder, these were the regular services we usually get from CISA 4. Are there any questions?
Any questions from board? Hearing none, I would take a motion to approve the CISA 4 2022-2023 contract.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
I have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. Burns Gilbert. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Item I, discussion and possible action to approve staff devices. Mr. Stearman.
We are looking at replacing the existing, it's mostly our teaching staff, their MacBook Air laptops with new ones. We are currently under a lease and have 2 payments remaining. And if you look at the slides, what we're looking at after our trade-in value is that for next year, we're looking at a budget savings of $12,000 to go ahead and replace these with new ones. Part of that is due to purchasing a lower number of devices. And then part of it is just based on the mechanics of leasing the new ones versus how much our old lease was and how much our trade-in value of the current ones are. So it just kind of worked out well for us. We can replace them a year early and save some money for next budget year. So we're bringing that option to the board to approve.
Mr. Stearman, I just want to clarify, it's not a $12,000 savings. It's actually the difference between 80,000 and 12,000. So
Yes, sorry.
our lease payment is $80,000 a year. And so we still have a lease payment remaining for this year. For next year, we would have to make our final lease payment of the 80,000. But trading in the devices, our current quote is 127,000 of income. And then we would have to pay the lease for the new equipment, which is $59,000. So our net
Sorry.
cost would actually be the 12,000 versus 80,000. And then it's a lower cost each year thereafter at 59,000.
Any questions or comments from the board?
We moved to use ESSER funds for this, correct? Or was that a discussion?
Yep. We cannot use ESSER funds for the staff devices. So the one-to-one
yeah.
devices earlier were ESSER. These will be our technology budget, which is part of Fund 10, our general operating fund.
And I know Ms. Brueggeman, you said you were looking into that. So we weren't.
Yeah, we're pretty sure that this is not an ESSER funded cost.
Thank you.
Okay, and how much is in that technology budget line?
$550,000 approximately.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments?
Have staff tested these laptops?
Yep, we have 2 of that model that we've had instructional staff use. Like every staff hasn't tested one, but we have gone through and tested with it. We don't have any software that isn't compatible with them. Everything that we're
But
using
they run
now.
the videos as needed and things that were issue with what you're replacing.
Yep, yeah. Our technology integration coaches both had a chance to use them.
Any further questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve staffing devices per Mr. Stearman's recommendation.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Hendricks, a second from Mr. McKenna. Roll call. Yes.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. J, discussion and possible action to approve a middle school track assistant coach due to numbers. Mr. Sanders.
Hi, good evening. So 2 weeks ago, I presented that we had 116 middle schoolers out for track with 5 paid coaches. And I was asking permission to hire a 6th coach with the recommendation for that coach to be Mr. Andrew Logue, who's been a substitute building sub in our building. I actually have to update. We had another student join track today for his first practice. So we have 117 students.
Are there any questions for Mr. Sanders?
No questions. I make a motion to approve the addition of the assistant track coach due to numbers.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion from Mr. Lyden and a second from Mr. Wells. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Go
Thank
fight,
you.
win.
Item K, discussion and possible action to approve the 2022-2023 certified contracts. Mr. Russ.
Yes, and board docs is the list of certified staff, teachers, counselors, instructional coaches, and so forth. Very proud to offer these, recommend these contracts for our certified staff for the 22-23 school year. We're very proud of our staff and will continue to support them, and they will do great work for our kids.
Do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Russ?
No questions. I make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 certified contracts as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Mr. Lyden, a second from Ms. Presswood. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Item L, discussion of possible action to set budget timeline for staff compensation for the 2022-2023 school year. Mr. Russ.
We'll let Ms. Hauser go first.
Thank you. So first, I wanted to go over our typical timeline for approving staffing decisions. And you'll notice that we are slightly behind this timeline as compared to other years. So these are some of the major milestones, though, that we'll still need to work through. So in October or November of the previous year, so this previous fall, we begin the draft budget for the following year. When that draft budget was created last fall, we used a 4% increase. CPI historically has been under 2%, which is how that 4% number came to be. Then October through December, we hold a series of compensation meetings with our teacher compensation committee. So TCM is teaching model committee of a variety of teachers and administrators who get there to review the teacher compensation plan and make sure that it's working appropriately for our district. In December and January, we decide on the positions that we're going to fill for the following year. So in essence, we confirm our staffing plan. In January, we get confirmation from the state of what CPI will be for July 1. This year, that announcement was 4.7%. In February and March, we review our different positions and look at market comparisons. So what are those similar positions getting in other districts or maybe in other jobs within our communities to make sure if we need any salary adjustments, and then we solidify those contract amounts. In March and April, we confirm our employee benefit renewals. And then in May, we send out our contracts for the next year. So where we're at right now is you just approved the contracts for the next year. We have set our employee benefits. We also have decided on our positions for the next year. So the two remaining decisions are regarding CPI and any market adjustments. Next slide, please. So that current draft budget was called using the 21-22 or this current year's salaries adjusted for any known turnover. PI of a 2% was built in long before we knew CPI would be at the 4.7%. We also built in an estimate for our teacher compensation model movement, which is steps for years of service and lanes for continuing education. And we also built in our classified staff. If they're within their first 3 years of employment, there are some leveling, get through their probationary period. After those, that does come just about at that 4% increase that was budgeted. And again, that only includes the items identified here. And so if we go to the last slide, we're looking for direction on how to move forward. And we really see it as having 3 different options, and districts around the state are utilizing any of these 3 options. And since we're outside of our typical timeline and we have some other things happening, we're looking for some feedback on the board on when us to come forward with the remaining salary discussions. So option A is to set the compensation for the employee groups, even if the budget isn't set yet. So in essence, compensation would be known, and then that would factor into any additional budget reductions needed. So set compensation and then the budget follows. Option B is finalize the budget and any reductions and then compensate with whatever's remaining. So in essence, set the budget at where the board desires it be, and then whatever's there available for compensation, that would be followed. And then option C is hold tight until October 15th when we are certain on what our next year's budget will be. Mr. Russ, anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time, unless there's some questions from the board.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I would like to see us pursue option A for a couple of reasons. One is I think all agree that we need to value our employees and do the best possible thing that we can for them. Finalizing our budget first and then going to the table certainly limits our options. We go with option A, then as part of the discussion with the employee groups, they can also contribute to ideas as far as additional reductions that may need to be made in order for us to provide the type of salaries that we would like to provide to our staff in order to retain them.
I would tend to agree. I mean, if I was an employee and I was looking at a board that chose option C, I think I'd run for the hills. That doesn't look like value an employee in any way. B, I guess I get, but option A to me is a clear-cut favorite.
Option A does present the problem that at some point in the future, if we are able to make reductions tonight, we may have to come back and make more reductions in the future. But I think that's something that we need to face.
But then we're not walking the fence when it comes to teacher or staff compensation. I think that'll be better to illustrate that we value our staff members. And so when we do go back and make cuts, we illustrate what we value versus having to say it's good enough and then it not really being good enough.
Are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to set the budget timeline for option A for staff compensation of the 2022-2023 school year.
I second that. Or
You're gonna make
I'll
the
make the motion.
Perfect. Thank you. Do I have a second?
And I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Wells, a second from Mr. Hendricks. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Line item M, discussion and possible action to approve possible budget reductions in regards to Cataract Elementary School, staffing plan, 403B employee retirement benefits and transportation. Mr. Russ.
Before we get into some slides, I just wanted to kind of state the why behind this agenda item specifically. These items have been talked about at the board in the past. And because of that, we decided to put them in the agenda item. Our current structure is that we want to have the committees take a look at things, get information and have discussion and then put the recommendation and then go to the full board. So these we have been presented before. Some have talked about more than others, but there's other items on this list that we have not discussed that, you know, everyone's asking, what about other options? What about other options? However, we did not want to get into those because we wanted to go through our proper process. And the last thing we wanted to do, we talked about valuing our employees and valuing our staff, is to have a discussion come up and that get blindsided by one of our employee groups, programs or anything like that. So that is the why behind this specific agenda item, to make sure we're transparent the best we can and to go through our committee structure and give everyone an opportunity to be heard and have that discussion. I hope that makes sense. But the last thing we want to do is blindside anyone, and we want to be transparent so the board can take action on these specific items. Okay. Ms. Hauser.
Slide, please. So as a recap of where we're at currently with our reductions, the board has approved reductions that are estimated at about $1.8 million. Those included reducing 7 certified for health insurance, delaying the purchase of math textbooks, allocating $800,000 in Fund 46 for capital projects over 2 years, replacing the high school one-to-one devices with ESSER funding, and moving the middle school co-curriculars to Fund 80. Next slide. And so where we're at currently is that I've gone back through our Fund 10 and Fund 27, so our operating budgets, and recalculated the total revenue and expenses based on the most current variables. So if you recall, that 2.8 million was calculated based off of a budget that was rolled forward last October or November. So I went through and confirmed those balances, and then also put in the actual savings from those items the board has already approved. And where that came down to is we're still looking at about $1.2 million worth of reductions. Our goal typically is a balanced budget, meaning that 1.2 million would actually be zero. And again, when we started this conversation a few months back, we were at a 2.8 million deficit. I also just want to remind us that these are budgetary figures, meaning they are with our best knowledge at this time, but they definitely will continue to change over the coming months. And they are not final until the budget is set in October. And I also wanted to point out that these budget figures do not include any changes in priorities. So if you recall the budget workshop that we held last week, we talked about some different priorities and things to analyze. This budget is reflecting our current operations.
And that is all the additional information we have at this time, pending your questions.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Burns Gilbert.
I just have some comments to get us started, I guess. That, I don't know, I've been pretty quiet, so I've been saving up some thoughts and wanted to share them with folks to help us make decisions and figure out what next steps look like. So first, I guess I want to apologize. I apologize for everyone, our students, employees, the community. I was helping with some of the parent-driven efforts to educate and promote the yes on the referendum. And now it's obvious that every opportunity or idea that didn't come to fruition through that process could have been the difference between 39 votes. So sorry about that. As a district, I think we can do better. I think we can do better to engage our community in the future by developing a strategic plan for that community engagement that includes regular conversations and feedback and the celebrations of the good things that are happening. And I hope that that's something that we can move forward with as part of those new priorities. Obviously, learning from this process. I'm learning everything every day, and that's part of one of my big takeaways from this. I think we can also do better for our educators, our employees, right? A lot of people didn't feel heard or included in some of this process, and I think our administration has guided us in different ways with a lot of uncertainty. So as a board, I think we can do some more clarity and direction and create some more goals that we can get behind it together moving forward to best serve the community. I think ultimately our students and employees, we're going to be already are and going to be continue to negatively impacted by the cuts that we have to make. And so I think that's a product of the community voting to not give us that authority, right? To use that money that had already existed and to maintain those current operations for the next 2 years. So that's part of that reality. I think the other part of the reality and really part of the why that we're here that I think is an important part to point out. Our community has a lot of people that are willing to spend lots of money and dollars and hours to confuse and make a very straightforward referendum request, adding doubt to that. I think there's people in the community that influence the decisions, the website that was used, rolling back local government, those goals that has been used to help spread flyers and money and resources. This is why we're here today. And that's, to me, the difference between 39 votes. And this is an example of how recent trends in national and state and now local politics, right, affect us here in Sparta, here in our community. And it's frustrating, especially when leadership from those no efforts didn't come to one of our community info sessions to learn about our specific situation. I hope that everyone who's been apathetic or disengaged, right, just doesn't do politics. To me, this is a wake-up call to help us all move better, move forward together in the future, because we will continue to improve and serve our students in our community. Despite everything, I'm hopeful that this process will bring our district together, our community together, more engaged, more involved, ultimately supportive of public education moving forward, because that's literally why we're here, right? Public education and the support we give for our students creates a foundation for a thriving community from every single role our graduates play, whether that's in Sparta or abroad, everywhere in between. And we're going to have more roadblocks. I met some incredible people along the way, and this isn't going to be the last issue we have to work through together. But I really think that we can do that. One part that's influencing me in these decisions that I wanted to share, if anyone is familiar. So Robert Greenleaf, he's the founder of servant leadership theory, which has been a big part of my life, especially working through some of the experts at Viterbo, and Greenleaf really just outlined the best test theory, right? And that's when it comes to ethical decision making. And that approach requires leaders and decision makers, community members, right, to ask those questions of the decisions that we make. And so those 3 questions I've had at the forefront of, do those that we serve, our students, our employees, our community, do they grow as people, right? Do they, while being served, become healthier and wiser and freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to serve others in the common good in the future? And then that last piece of, what is the effect on the least privileged in our society? Will they benefit or at least not be further deprived? And I think those 3 I tried to integrate throughout all of these decisions. I hope I can consider everyone, not just me, but everyone can consider some of this mindset as we move forward for the next conversations and the cuts that we'll probably have to make after tonight too, because that's another reality that is pretty obvious from our projections. And as board members, right, we're here to be elected and do hard things and for the betterment of everyone in our community. These decisions, right, pertaining to the cuts, People are frustrated, angry, sad, other things. I encourage everyone to continue advocating for yourselves, having crucial conversations, I think, with their neighbors, loved ones, community members, right? That's how we, as a district and as a community, continue to grow and learn and thrive, because we are doing those things in a lot of ways, and that gets drowned out, unfortunately. And again, I hope this process, this election, solidifies how important it is for everyone to be engaged. So lastly, I'll just kind of wrap up here to our cataract families, right? I was really grateful to learn about the impact Ms. Farrington had, and so many other stories, right, from that meeting a few weeks ago. The impact of the generations from cataract have had on the small community, but definitely the larger Sparta area. That can't be denied. For me, I think a couple, yeah, the community that's built in cataract, a couple late nights on public land, cataract days, breakfast at the Long Branch. You know, the stories that were told at that meeting a few weeks ago really highlight to me the legacy and the values. And I think those are going to last a lot longer than the school, regardless of what happens tonight or what happens in a year or what happens down the road. I think, you know, some of the people that I've learned a lot from throughout this process, I think they will continue those values, right? Whether that's, you know, Lee Culpet or Kevin Scheidl's presentation, Bethany, right? And I think of the next generation of cataracts from JJ and Mia and Weston. I think those people will bring that forward. The other reality that I know is that our state and federal politics, or our state and federal cycle, right? If it doesn't close tonight, this will have to be a part of every single budget discussion in the future, whether that's August, whether that's next year, right, in 2 years. And so I think that's a duty that we have as a community and as a board to continue having that conversation, especially knowing that if things don't change at the state level, especially, right, we will still always have to pass local referendums to exceed that limit, even if they give us more money to spend. And that's frustrating. I can use a lot of other adjectives there, but I joined the board to make decisions that, you know, set our students and our district up for success now and into the future, right? Especially with that kind of future lens. And my daughter, you know, will start in the fall. And I think that's something that I bring to these conversations. I think that Leon is a prime example of how a community can come together and thrive, you know, without an operating school. And I know Cataract will do everything you can to continue those traditions, to continue and build that strong community in ways that we don't even know, because we can't tell what the future will look like. And so for me, I think, how does keeping Cataract open help the community and the entire district? Other than replaying the same conversation and this hurt and pain and frustration every time budget cuts need to happen. And that's not something I want to put other people through again and again. And I also can't justify spending ESSER funds designed to serve our entire district through recovery on 70 students and 10 employees for a Band-Aid that we know will continue to be conversations after birth rate projections come through the state and national politics, and now how that's filtered down for our local politics. So that's, to wrap up, everything I wanted to say and share, and that I've been mulling over through the conversations. And so with that, I'll make a motion to close Cataract.
Do we have further discussion? Mr. Hendricks?
Well, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to your motion, and that would be to, yes, close Cataract, but use any savings above $500,000 to improve busing district-wide.
So just like that, we're gonna do that? Like, these people came to us and offered many valuable ideas and gave us their input. Are we not obligated to say, let's give them one more year and see if they can make this happen?
Mr. Wells, go ahead.
I just want to be clear, even after we make the motion, we're still up for discussion, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So
Somebody explain this to me, please. How are we not going to give them a chance? Why? We are at a crossroads here. We have new board members. Why are we not asking to sit down with Leah and yeah, we had the budget workshop and there has to be other ways where yeah, I get it, 70 students, but 70 students are still 70 students. We are still, I was sent an email today telling me that I had to abstain from this vote because my heart is dear and near to the Cataract community. Granted, I don't live in that community anymore. I am a Sparta city resident, but I'm still with Cataract and I will still fight for them. So I'm asking that we give them the year that they asked for and see what they can do. And we sit as a board and go through the budget line item by line item and see why do we have to have $400,000 in capital improvements every year? Why do we have to have $500,000 in our technology budget? Why can't we move those monies to make this work? I don't feel that this vote is necessary right now at this moment in time.
Mr. Wells?
Yeah, for the sake of moving us forward and creating a clear direction, I'd like to second John's motion. And so then we could continue discussion on this very touchy subject.
Well, we need to, Mr. Hendricks asked for an amendment.
Yeah, and I like that. I think helping address those busing issues makes a lot of sense with what that savings looked like. So I'll make that amendment.
So just to be clear, the amended motion as of right now would be to close Cataract Elementary School and utilize any funds above the 500,000, correct, Mr. Hendricks?
Correct.
To improve busing for our Cataract students,
District-wide.
district-wide.
And I will second that motion.
All right, is there further discussion?
Yeah, I've got a couple things I think I'd like to say. First off, I'd want to thank everybody that's called me, emailed me, sent me a message on Facebook, came up and talked at this meeting or any other. I did my best to talk as long as you wanted to. I tried to answer every email. I think that as we go into this, one of the issues that this board has had historically has been communication. That communication seems to have, the lack of communication seems to have shown in a lack of transparency. I respect both sides of this argument, and I think every person that I talked to brought a different view, a different little piece to it. My issue is not $647,000. I get it. It's a real cut. And it's exactly what we need. I think my issue is more about the process. Have we done this in a way that's transparent to Cataract? We give them 2 weeks. 2 weeks prior to an election and a referendum that it just wasn't good. We threw down and said we're going to drop non-recurring expenses, including technology, staff, and building maintenance. I don't hear closing a school, and neither did Cataract. I also question the speed that we want about this. What percentage of the budget have we been through? Are we 10, 20, 30? I know I'm new, so there's been discussions that have happened that I'm not in on. But I'll tell you, 5-6 hours a day, I'm in this. I'm trying to find every dime I can, not just for Cataract, not for Herman. You know, the fact that this is on the table and we've got staff arguing over which position is more important and parents arguing over which school is more important. It's like we've decided to throw ourselves back into the fire when we didn't have to. We got a list of 40 items last week. How many items were on that? How much time have we vetted to figure out if the money is there? Or is this just Cataract's time. I get not wanting to use one-time funds for reoccurring expenses. Explain to me how a referendum is not a one-time fund. There's no difference between an ESSER fund and a referendum fund. It's $1. I think you fund it. And not just cataract, I think you fund 1.2. We've got the funds. Let's find them. Let's fund 1.2 and spend a year and go through everything. Let's do our jobs. I don't care if we get to 1.2. I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop at 1.2. Let's go to 2.2 and use that extra $1 million to put back to our staff, to put back to our kids, to make us long-term viable. When I look at where we're spending our money now, the savings from cataract, it's going to be gone. You know, why is today, the day we're supposed to vote, the first time something like this ever comes up? Did anyone else know that our support staff has grown this fast? I mean, I think it's our job to know, but we haven't dug deep enough to find it yet. The ESSER funds, or the SVLA rather, at $575 whatever $1,000. That's 50 kids. There's ways that we can keep them in the district. If we partner with RVA tomorrow, we save $300,000. Every kid stays in the district, every one. And I don't know if that's the right answer or not, because I haven't taken enough time to research it. Since the referendum failed, we've had our foot on the gas. I don't get it. Why have we put a self-imposed timeline on this when the budget's due in October? We don't have to. Since the original tier 1 and 2 cuts, when has the board gotten together? When has another budget committee gotten together and reviewed? It's like we've decided tier 1 and tier 2 are the only answers. I don't know. Maybe those are the only answers. I'm just not sold on it yet. I think there's more. More takes time. It's been 6 weeks. I'm just not buying we're done.
I'm
Well,
willing to put in the time if anybody else is.
Let me try to address a couple of those points. One is, why do we need to move forward at this time? A vast majority of our expenses are related to staffing, and we need to make staffing decisions. We can't wait until after May to make staffing decisions because we have to offer contracts. Okay, so we don't have the luxury of not moving forward on those things. As far as waiting a year, my concern, well, one of my concerns is if we could not pass a referendum that would benefit the whole district, I think it would be extremely hard for this district to sell a referendum solely to keep cataract open. I just, obviously there would be great support in the north part of the district, but I don't see the support for the rest of the district. And that would be, the referendums are expensive. And I just don't think that would be a good investment. So.
And just kind of to echo John's point, like Colin and John bring up good points. If cataracts survives another year, and I say if, it's going to be a reoccurring discussion year after year after year. And eventually it's going to come down to the referendum, as John said, is going to be straight cataract, yes or no. And I can tell you right now, if we went to the district in our electorate and said cataract, yes or no, and that was straight on the agenda, it would fail 2-1. I'm going to be totally honest. Okay. In terms of the discussion tonight, I do echo Pat's point that I think this is moving too quickly. I think we owe those parents answers on some questions, especially busing. I want to know what that bus number is. If we add 1 route, 2 routes. This is coming from a person who lived on the Cataract or the Cashton Sparta school district line. I rode an hour and a half every day to school and home. Okay, I know what it feels like. It sucks. The one benefit is I was able to stay up late playing video games because I was able to take an hour nap on the way home just on bus. So I get the long bus rides. I mean, and I had to do it as a middle schooler. I don't even want to know what I would have had to dealt with if I was in grade school. Do I think, after we get to the point of, we have all these discussions, where is Cataract going to be on that chopping block? I'm going to be honest, it doesn't look good. Okay. That's a big number. And as somebody who's dealt with city budgets for 10 years, this school budget for 4 years, and having been an employee of the district for 8 years prior to that, there's not money just sitting in closets. Okay, I know some people in the public think that we just have money and we print it in the back office, and that's what Chris's job is with printers. That's not how this works. Okay, we have a budget, we stick to the budget, and we allocate that money to our students based on what our administration and our staff feel are our priorities. So in terms of tonight's vote, when this goes, because it does have a second, I'll be honest, my vote is no. Not because I think Cataract deserves to stick around, but because I think we owe those parents the additional discussion and the transparency that they asked for.
Mr. Wells, did you have something further?
Yeah, we were all elected on this board to make the tough decisions, and we all clearly know that. And putting stuff ahead for future board members is just doing a disservice to our community. We just end up creating a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety when it comes to, okay, this referendum doesn't pass. What cuts are we going to have to make again and again and again? And using a Band-Aid like ESSER funds, which are once in a lifetime. Stuff like COVID is only supposed to happen once in every 100 years. It's literally once in a lifetime funds. We will never get something like this again. And we need to do something in terms that will benefit all students and all stakeholders within our district. If we ignore those things, we're just putting us farther and farther behind. I think whatever message we state tonight is a message that we clearly should say. I'm going to be blatantly honest. I believe that we should value all our community members over the building, that we should move forward and make adequate decisions that show that we value our staff and encourage community engagement no matter what building they're in. Because I was once told by a previous educator when she was asked for an interview, what role would you have technology in our education? She said, technology in education doesn't really mean that much to me because all I need is my heart and a piece of chalk. And in reality, that's what all our educators have and would put forward. And that's a community that we were going to see even at no matter what building we have them in.
I think when it comes down to it, this is obviously a really hard discussion, but our community did speak. We have a $26 million elementary school that has plenty of capacity. When we take a look at a $647,000 budget deficit, that's something that the rest of our district could use, all students, right? All 2,900 of them. For me, it's a really hard sell. When our community spoke, asked us to make budget reductions rather than transfer funds, that we needed to cut 2.8 from our budget. And $647,000 is considerable reoccurring savings that can go back to all of our students and all of our staff. So with that, I will call for roll call.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Vote passes 4-3. Item N, discussion and possible, oh, I'm sorry.
I think there's some additional items here that we could discuss as far as reductions.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
And so I,
Go ahead, Mr. Hendricks. Sorry about that.
yeah, I would like to have us consider a few additional items. One would be to move, well, I'm going to make several. Move 3 teachers to ESSER, reduce 2 teaching positions in K-5, which will increase class sizes somewhat, and reduce building budgets to $100 per student. I believe that will generate another $500,000.
Can you repeat that, Mr. Hendricks?
Move 3 teaching positions to ESSER, which just delays the problem, obviously, for another year, but amounts to about $250,000, closer to our goal. Reduce 2 additional teaching positions in K-5, which I understand will increase class sizes, but I don't think it will be a significant increase. And reduce building budgets to $100 per student, which I believe will save about $100,000, adding up to over $500,000 in additional budget reductions.
Well, Mr. Hendricks, have you gone through these numbers with Leah at all?
What the ideas are not mine. They're on the list that Mr. McKenna referenced, the 40 additional items. Actually, in those 40 additional items, one item was to move 6 teaching positions to ESSER. I think that's more than I would be comfortable with, and add an estimated savings of about $85,000 per staff position, salary and benefits. I rough estimate that at about $250,000. Reducing the 2 teaching positions and increasing class sizes was also on that list of possibilities. Again, estimating the savings at about $85,000 a position. And then the reduced building budget to $100 per student. Yes, that was a calculation that was provided to me by the administration. Now, I don't like any of these. I'm particularly bothered by the reducing the building budget to $100 per student. But I don't think we have a whole lot of options, and there's still additional cuts that will need to be made in order for us to reach the 1.2 million, which is just the base. It's after we go to negotiations, we're gonna need to make an additional cuts above that. So I'm throwing those out as possibilities that I would recommend we consider.
And with that, John, I don't feel comfortable making a decision on any of those items because none of those items have been brought through committee. I guess I want administration input before we as a board decide. Like, I would like the board to entertain that discussion and do it through committee as opposed to at this meeting here.
I think if we're able to wait, which I think we can, I like that idea to pass that through committee so we can be a little more informed from our directors, if you would be okay with that, Mr. Hendricks.
Well, for the one point of order is that the building budgets are not listed on the agenda item. And that wouldn't be, I'd have a hard time putting into cataract staffing plan, employee retirement benefits and transportation. Since we have not talked about that.
All right, I will withdraw my motion, but I will ask in the future that when we have an agenda item to reduce the budget, that we not limit it, because we have said all along that this is not an all-inclusive list. And when we then list only things we want to talk about, it makes it difficult for us to get anything done.
And and that decision came from me when we put the discussion together, because I was not going to blindside staff out of the blue and say, hey, your job's on the table tonight, and they had no idea.
But staffing is on.
But the specific ideas were not.
I just have a quick question. And I know one of my directors would be able to answer it. Do we know, out of the positions that were listed, are all of them covered through attrition, or are we going to actually have to make some contract reductions, non-renewals?
So the positions that have previously been approved by the board are all 100% covered by attrition. And looking at Mr. Hendrick's recommendation, moving 3 positions to Esther is just changing the funding source, so that wouldn't need attrition. And then reducing 2 more teachers at grades K-5. I am reasonably certain those would be covered by attrition.
I would agree with that based on our past attrition data.
So I feel I'd be in agreement with making this a committee level. We made a big decision tonight, and I think for me, I feel that was sufficient. So, but I do think just to be able to have additional information on that for our next committee meeting, that would be great. Have that as an item on there.
I think it'd probably be diligent to address the other couple things on the agenda for tonight, though, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
I'm just, before we go, Mr. Hendricks, did you make a motion to do those, or you just?
He withdrew it.
You withdrew it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank
I
you.
think it died for lack of a second.
Mr. McKenna, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I guess I would probably argue very strongly against the 403 retirement benefit reduction.
I would like to remove that.
I'm all for removing it. I think that's one of the biggest issues I think we're going to have is staff retention. Just because of the world we live in today, you drive past 6 help wanted signs no matter where you go. I want no part of that. So I would be happy to remove that.
Can we make a motion to do that?
I would make a motion to remove the 403B employee retirement benefits from budget reduction conversation.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
All right, I have a motion for Mr. McKenna, a second from Mr. Burns Gilbert. We'll do a roll call.
Well, maybe a
wait.
little more discussion.
Okay, absolutely.
If you don't mind me starting, I agree with John, and as much as I'd hate to remove, well, actually, got to use the right terminology here. As much as I'd hate to remove that 403B compensation from the educators themselves, what we've told everyone from the board, well, from a general standpoint, was that everything's on the table and that it's meant to be on the table. And I don't think we should get rid of things too soon. I mean, I obviously do not support removing this from our educators, but I think we'd be doing a big disservice if we didn't always have that recycled on the table. And maybe John would like to follow up with that statement.
Well, thank you. And I agree with you. And my point with that is I too would strongly oppose unilaterally removing the 403B contribution. However, we might get to the table with the employees that are involved, and they might want salary instead of the benefit. And then if we take that off the table, we again remove that flexibility from the board.
The list isn't inclusive, though.
Well, if we make a motion that we're not going to cut the employee benefit retirement, then we have taken that option off the table. Whereas when we sit down with the employees and they say, hey, we would take half as much, and if you put the rest in salary, we'll have to come back and undo that motion.
So the only way to remove something bad off the list is to vote for it?
The only way to, well, my suggestion is, yeah, just don't vote for it. Just, it can be out there, just don't.
If nobody
don't
ever
hit-
makes a motion, it never comes up.
Exactly. And if someone makes the motion and the rest of us don't like it, then we can vote it down,
I'm just kind of echo John and Todd. I don't anticipate anybody up here on the board being okay with removing this as an option, but I also don't want, if anything that the last 2 years has taught us is that we don't know what's going to happen next week. And I don't want to take something off the table when we come back and we're like, oh, well, why didn't we use that? That's stupid. And then we have to come back and undo anything that was done. So.
Mr. McKenna, did you make a motion to that? I can't remember if you did or not.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I did. I guess I need to withdraw the motion.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion?
Chair Schulte?
Yeah,
Could I
please.
add a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think where we're at with the 403B is good guidance. So what we're looking at from an administration standpoint is this the list the board wanted to stick to, or do we want to continue exploring more options? And I think we've had good guidance on that without a motion. The last one that you have to talk about is transportation, and I just wanted to give you an update on that as well. So this year's budget was framed with 30 routes being budgeted, and through route efficiencies that Southwest has found during the course of this year. As of today, we're down to 28 routes. So we've already saved 2 routes throughout the course of this year. And in talking with Derek Backstrucker, the owner of Southwest, he feels comfortable that we could form next year's budget with those 28 routes. So that savings has kind of naturally occurred over the course of this year. As we're talking about adding routes back in the district, it's approximately $52,000 a route.
So we could add 2 routes back in without a budget increase because it was already in the budget?
Almost. So our contract increases with CPI each year. So our contract did have a 4.7% increase, and the fuel costs have gone up. So our cost for transportation will go up, but we wouldn't be adding any new routes. We could go back to the baseline of 30.
Given the action that the board has taken already tonight, though, between those 2 routes and the savings that was generated, we might be able to make a dent in those long bus routes.
I would say correct. And I would work with the folks at Southwest on what exactly that could look like.
I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert on busing, but I do know that it takes a lot of resources to have even the smallest effect when you're talking about a district as large as ours. But I'm confident in the skills of Southwest to be able to make the best use of that and maybe perhaps ease some of the concerns about the long rides.
I might
I would agree with that. And I also just want to point out that like anything in the car industry right now, buses are also very hard to get your hands on. So it's about a year back order. So this is important information for me to get to the owner of Southwest to make sure that we get to keep our fleet here and it doesn't get repurposed or what have you, because getting our hands on newer additional buses will be quite a challenge.
If we're looking at 2 routes, I might suggest one that goes each direction to shorten both sides.
Great suggestion. Further discussion?
Where did we jump back on for bus routes again? I just want to be clear. How was that mentioned again on our discussion?
Oh, just it's one of the agenda items for transportation.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Like Josh, I saw the Cashton bus drive by my house every day. So I know what it's like to have that hour, 30-minute bus ride. Remember waking up when I was 7 I'm not waking up at 6:15, but remember on the slip of paper your bus is coming at 6:17 in the morning and getting to school by 8 o'clock. So I completely understand, long bus route times and whatnot. And in fact, my brothers with special needs, they had to, at the time, they had to go even earlier before 6 a.m. and just to, and the board has made a lot of progress in reducing bus times. And I think with the budget reductions that we made today, we would make, if not large strides, progress. So I really like seeing that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item N, discussion and possible action to approve the grants and donations. Mr. Russ.
Yes, we have one for the board approval. Matthews Archery gave a very generous donation over the $1,000 threshold for, so the board needs to approve that for our students with special needs.
I make a motion to approve the donation by Matthews Archery.
I second that.
I have a motion from Mr. Light and a second from Mr. Wells. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And then we have some additional ones that are less than, but no, they're just as valuable. Sarah Anderson earned the National At-Risk Education Network At-Risk Teacher of the Month. And for her, she got a nice donation there for students at need. And then we have First Community Credit Union, Sparta United Methodist Church, and Sparta Community Holiday Group, which gave a generous donation to the backpack program.
Thank you for all of those donations and grants. Moving on to agenda item O, meeting schedule and future agenda items.
Before we get into the future agenda items, just wanted to remind the board of the policy workshop, committee of the whole, full board, and then the committee of the whole in June for our upcoming board meetings.
All right, item P, any announcements or information?
Mr. Schulze, I'd like to make a comment.
Mr. Lighten, you have the floor.
So before I start my comment, none of this of what I'm about to say is in regards to cataract and the discussion that happened today or in the past. This item has been dated April 26th for 3 months. Over the past 20 years of my life, I have served this community in a wide variety of ways. Football coach at various levels, Gridiron Club treasurer, Boys and Girls Club, a Sparta board member, city alderman for a decade. I promised I wouldn't do this. And a Sparta school board member for 4 years. Through the years, I've never asked this community for anything in return, as I thought the people of Sparta, especially our youth, were worth my time and sacrifice. To this day, I still believe that. Through the last 2 years, I've seen politics tear this community apart by inserting partisanship from both sides, right and left, into our non-political institutions, and we are all the worse for it. I've been harassed, berated, sworn at, and received death threats on a multitude of occasions from people I do not know, people I once considered friends, and even my church family. I've been asked if school board was going to be my Alamo. My wife was told that her and I needed to sit down and have a serious discussion with our children in regards to what we hold dear in life, as all those things can be taken away from us in a second. This is not the Sparta I grew up knowing, respecting, and loving. This was something I thought I would only read about in a paper happening somewhere else. My children stopped going into public for fear that they would see their father or family physically or verbally attacked by members of our own community. Even after enduring all that, I strive for what amounted to be the near impossible task of trying to bridge two sides of the same coin into a compromise. I sought to see all angles of an issue and put our students, families, and our staff to the forefront of every decision I made. Instead of recognizing I was trying to come to a compromise for all parties, I was attacked by the more belligerent and vocal members of our community because I didn't do what they wanted to do, regardless of how their choice would have affected our students, staff, and families. Over that time, I regret no decisions I have made over the years, and given the chance to do them again, I would change nothing. I am proud of all of our SASD staff. Time and time again, we ask the impossible of them and they rise to the task every day to do what is right for our students. I am proud of our administration team and the work they have done for this district. This community has no idea the work our staff and administration put in to make this district a success. As both a parent and a board member, thank you for everything you do for our students and our community. This community owes you all so much. You are true unsung heroes, whether some in our community choose to acknowledge it or not. I am proud of the people I've worked with on this board, and I respect each and every one of them, regardless of whether we agree on a decision or not. I know they put our students first and leave their personal beliefs and ego at the door. Please let this letter serve as my official resignation from the Sparta Area School Board effective immediately. This is a decision that I do not take lightly. And this decision has been many months in the making. With consultation from family and many members of the community whom I trust. I'd like to thank my many supporters over the year. I would not be where I am today without all of you. Back in December, I committed to seeing the selection through and seating a new board, and I've done that. Mentally and physically speaking, I can go no further. I always said that as soon as my position affected my family's well-being, I would be done. We have now reached that point. It is my opinion that this office has become too toxic for the health and safety of myself and my family. And I will not be making any additional comments on this topic. I ask the public and the media to respect this decision. I wish this board the best, and I hope God grants you the strength to make these tough decisions ahead. And with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.